Welcome, chosen ones, to this moment. This video isn't here by accident, and neither are you. If you're watching this, it's because you've been set apart for something greater. You're not just wandering through life hoping to find meaning, you've been called. There's a divine thread running through your story, and this message is part of it. But let me be clear, if you don't believe in God, if you don't believe in spiritual depth or faith, this message won't resonate with you. You can walk away now, because what we're about to uncover is only for those who are ready to go deeper. This is not for the faint of heart. It's for the awakened, the seekers, the ones chosen to live on a higher level. Now that we've cleared the noise, let's get into what you came for. This message is built on a truth that transforms not just your actions, but your entire mindset. Real change doesn't start with fixing your habits. It starts with the way you think, what you believe about yourself, and what you believe about God. If your mind is filled with fear, doubt, and anxiety, your life will reflect those chains. But when your thoughts align with God's truth, you step into a whole new reality. One where your identity is rooted in love, your steps are guided by peace, and your soul finds rest even in the middle of chaos. In this video, we're unlocking the secret to spiritual renewal and mental transformation. We'll explore why fear loses its grip when your mind is anchored in divine truth, how pain becomes a portal to purpose, and why trusting God's plan is the only real way to find peace in this world. It's about more than surface-level changes. It's about aligning your mind with God's will so your actions follow. This isn't just about positive thinking. It's about breaking free from the chains of doubt and stepping into your full potential in Christ. So, if you're ready to discover the power of a renewed mind, sharpen your vision and deepen your spiritual awareness, watch this video all the way through. Don't just skim it, absorb it. And if this message resonates with you, go ahead and like this video, subscribe if you're new, and drop 777 in the comments below as a sign that you're aligning yourself with divine truth. Here's a question to sit with. What would your life look like if your thoughts were completely aligned with the will of God? We're about to explore that. Let's begin this journey now. Now that your heart is open and your spirit is ready, it's time to take the next step. What you're about to hear isn't theory, it's transformation. These are not surface-level ideas, but deep spiritual principles that have the power to renew how you think, how you feel, and how you live. So take a deep breath, clear the distractions, and lean in. Because now we're going to explore together the 9 life-changing truths that will guide you in renewing your mind and stepping fully into the purpose God designed for you. Let's begin. Before we dive into the journey ahead, let me take you back to a truth that holds the power to reshape your entire life. In Romans 12:02, it is written, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." This is not a poetic ideal or a moral suggestion. It is revealing a spiritual law that governs all true transformation. Real change does not begin with a change of behavior. It begins with a change of belief, with an awakening of the world within you. As your thoughts realign with divine truth, everything else follows. Your vision becomes clearer, your responses become gentler, and your life begins to reflect a deeper, higher calling. And so, let's begin this journey together, starting with the very first principle, the foundation of all lasting change. Transformation begins with the renewing of your mind. This is the first key that opens the door to a renewed life. You see, the world has its own rhythm, its own pressure, and its own patterns. It constantly urges you to define yourself by appearance, performance, status, and success. But when you follow that path, something within you always feels misaligned. You might achieve, impress, or gain approval, but deep inside, there's an emptiness that lingers. Why? Because you were not created to reflect the world. You were created to reflect the mind of God. And to do that, your thinking must be renewed. Not rebranded, not polished, but completely made new by the truth that comes from above, not from the noise around you. This renewal is not about positive thinking or motivational slogans. It's a spiritual recalibration. When your heart is saturated in divine truth, your mind starts to shift away from fear and toward trust, from anxiety to assurance, from comparison to confidence. God is not asking you to change through pressure. He invites you to change through revelation. And the first step in that process is letting go of the lies you've believed about yourself. Those voices that say you're not enough, that you're too broken, too late, too small to matter. Those voices are not from the God who formed you. They are echoes of a world trying to shape you into something you are never meant to be. What I discovered and what I want you to grasp is that God speaks a different word over your life. He says you are loved, not when you succeed, not if you prove yourself. You are loved right now, in your confusion, your weakness, your searching. He says you are chosen, not by accident, not by default, but intentionally, purposefully. He says you are strengthened, not by your own efforts, but by His Spirit working in you. And most powerfully, He says you were made for something sacred. You carry within you a divine purpose that no one else can fulfill. This truth isn't meant to just comfort you, it's meant to awaken you. So what happens when your mind begins to absorb these truths? When renewal takes root, you begin to see everything through the lens of eternity. Your circumstances no longer define your peace. Your past no longer dictates your worth. Your challenges become training grounds, not obstacles. You look at adversity and instead of asking, "Why me?" you begin to ask, "What is God forming in me through this?" That's not just a mindset shift. That's a spiritual transformation. And it opens the door to a peace that surpasses understanding, not because life got easier, but because your spirit got stronger. I want you to imagine a life where your mind is not at war with your spirit. A life where your thoughts are not constantly pulled by fear, doubt, or insecurity. What if your inner world was filled with clarity instead of confusion, peace instead of panic, joy instead of bitterness? That's not just wishful thinking. That's the fruit of a renewed mind. And let me be honest with you, it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a moment, it's a process. But the more you anchor your thoughts in truth, the more your mind begins to shift. Slowly, steadily, you start to feel the weight lift, and suddenly, what once overwhelmed you no longer has power over you. Let me show you what this looks like in practice. When fear starts whispering lies, a renewed mind hears, "God has not given me a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and sound mind." When anxiety creeps in about the future, a renewed mind stands on the truth. "I know the plans God has for me, plans to prosper me and not to harm me." When insecurity screams that you'll never be enough, a renewed mind rests in the knowledge, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made." These aren't empty phrases, they are anchors. And when they take root in your thoughts, they begin to overflow into your actions, your decisions, and your relationships. The world will always try to convince you that peace comes from control, that success comes from striving, and that identity comes from approval. But when your mind is renewed, you realize something different. Peace comes from surrender. Success comes from obedience. Identity comes from your Creator, and nothing, no person, no failure, no past mistake can take that from you. That's the kind of freedom the world cannot offer, but God can. As we continue on this journey, I urge you to not just listen passively. Engage, reflect. Let these truths press into the places you've guarded for too long, the places where bitterness has built walls, where shame has hidden your light, where fear has kept your voice quiet. Because if you allow God to work through your thoughts, He will begin to heal your soul. And that healing doesn't just change your life, it changes the lives of those around you. When you are transformed, your presence becomes a light, your peace becomes contagious, your joy becomes a testimony. You might be asking, but how do I begin this transformation? It starts with one decision: to stop conforming. Stop letting the world dictate your value. Stop agreeing with the lies that you are unworthy, and start listening to the voice of the one who made you. A renewed mind is not just something you receive, it's something you cultivate. Through prayer, through truth, through silence, through surrender. It's not about having all the answers. It's about letting go of the need to have them and trusting the one who does. The most powerful shift you'll ever make is not in your circumstances, it's in your thinking. Because once your mind is set free, your life will follow. You'll find yourself responding to stress with calm, to pain with purpose, to waiting with trust. You'll begin to feel the presence of God not just in mountaintop moments, but in the small details of your day. You'll notice grace in conversations, joy in simplicity, strength in weakness. That's the fruit of a renewed mind. And it's available to you, not someday, not when you've fixed everything, but right now. So if this message is stirring something inside you, don't let it pass. Let it move you to action. Let it push you to seek, to ask, to knock. Because the door will be opened. And on the other side, you will find not just a new way of thinking, but a new way of living. One marked by peace, clarity, and purpose. One that reflects the heart of God in a world desperate for light. This is not just about you. This is about who you will become when your mind is aligned with divine truth. And now that you've heard these words, you can't unknow them. The invitation has been given. The truth has been revealed. The next step is yours. Will you let your mind be renewed, or will you stay conformed to a world that never truly satisfies? The answer to that question will shape everything, and we're just getting started. That understanding led me to a turning point, a realization that redefined everything I thought I knew about love. It's not enough to feel deeply or give endlessly if love itself is misaligned. When we place people, possessions, or passions above the one who created love, we inevitably experience confusion, disappointment, and emptiness. But when God becomes the anchor of our affection, everything else begins to fall into its rightful place. And that brings us to the second key principle in renewing your mind, one of the most essential of all, loving God above everything else. This is not just a command, it is a lifeline. A reordered heart creates a reordered life. When you love God above all else, everything else in your life begins to align. This isn't about becoming religious or adopting a strict code of conduct. It's about putting first things first. What happens when you center your love on the eternal rather than the temporary is that the lesser loves in your life, your relationships, your passions, even your ambitions, begin to take on a new shape. They are no longer meant to complete you. They no longer carry the burden of defining your worth. Instead, they become expressions of the love you already receive, the overflow of something far deeper and more secure. I wrote that when God holds the highest place in your heart, all other loves are elevated, not diminished. That truth still echoes today. Romantic love, friendship, family, even your love for meaningful work, these are all good things, but they were never designed to sit on the throne of your soul. When we place any of them in God's position, we set ourselves up for disappointment, for confusion, and ultimately for heartbreak. That's because no human being, no accomplishment, no earthly pursuit can satisfy the hunger that was put inside of you by God alone. You've likely felt that hunger. It shows up in the quiet hours of the night when the noise fades. It rises when success doesn't satisfy, or when the relationship you hoped would complete you begins to strain under expectations it was never meant to carry. That aching void is not a sign of something wrong with you. It's a reminder of something right with how you were created. You were made for union with God, and anything less will always feel like it's missing something. That space within you is not a flaw, it's a sacred invitation. When you finally respond to that invitation and begin to love God above all, something extraordinary begins to happen. The constant striving begins to quiet. The identity crisis begins to settle. The pressure to prove, to earn, to impress starts to lose its grip. Loving God first doesn't make you care less about people. It helps you love them better. It doesn't make you cold or detached. It frees you from the kind of desperate attachment that leads to fear and control. Because when your soul is anchored in divine love, you no longer demand from others what only God can give. But there's a price to loving God this way. Let's not pretend otherwise. It means surrender. It means choosing to let go of pride, the desire to dominate, and the need to always be right. It means laying down the urge to define your own path without Him. This kind of love isn't passive, it is powerfully active. It calls you to trust a will greater than your own and to release your grip on everything you've used to create your own version of peace. It demands not just your affection but your allegiance. And yet, the paradox is this: In that surrender, you find your freedom. In placing God at the center, you recover your wholeness. What I found in my own journey is that the act of loving God reshapes your heart in ways no other force can. You begin to see the world differently. You start to feel conviction where before there was indifference. You sense clarity where there was confusion. And you begin to love people not because they earn it, but because you've been so radically loved that you cannot help but extend it. You find yourself more patient, more kind, more able to endure. Why? Because you're no longer drawing from a dry well. You're drinking from a source that never runs out. And let's talk about desire. Loving God doesn't destroy your desires. It purifies them. It brings them into alignment with something eternal. The things you once chased, recognition, applause, possessions, begin to lose their shine. Not because they're inherently bad, but because they're no longer the fuel of your soul. You start to crave what is pure, lasting, and meaningful. You long to be generous, to serve, to live with purpose that transcends your own gain. This shift doesn't come through willpower. It comes through love. The kind of love that transforms your motives from the inside. I've heard people say that loving God feels abstract, but I assure you, it's the most grounded thing you'll ever do. It's in the decision to put His voice above the opinions of others. It's in the quiet moment of prayer where you let Him search your heart. It's in the act of obedience when it would be easier to walk away. This kind of love is practical. It touches your time, your choices, your relationships, your money, your future. Nothing is untouched when God is truly first, and yet nothing is lost. In fact, everything begins to flourish because it has been placed in the right order. Now you might be wondering, what if I'm not there yet? What if my heart still feels divided? That's the beauty of this love. It grows as you draw near. You don't have to arrive perfect, you just have to be willing. God doesn't demand perfection, He invites honesty. He doesn't ask you to have it all together, He asks you to bring all the pieces to Him. And as you do, He begins to weave a love story in your life that is deeper and more enduring than anything the world can write. The love of God is not a layer you add to your life, it is the foundation that holds everything else together. Without it, all other loves are unstable. But with it, even the hardest parts of life begin to carry a different weight. You suffer, but not without hope. You wait, but not without purpose. You lose, but never without the promise of restoration. This is the fruit of placing God at the center. A love that clarifies, sustains, and revives. So here is where we land. To love God above all is not to reject the world, but to see it rightly. It is to love more deeply, live more freely, and give more generously. It is to recognize that everything else in life, every joy, every pain, every relationship, is meant to point you back to Him. And when He is your greatest love, all other loves fall into place. They no longer compete, they complement. That is the divine design. That is the secret, not just to faith, but to wholeness. And once you've tasted this love, you'll never settle for imitation again. That inner battle between trust and control is one every believer must face. And it's not something we conquer once, it's a daily surrender. We wake up each morning with a choice, to grip tightly to outcomes or to release them into the hands of a God whose vision goes far beyond our own. Letting go isn't weakness, it's wisdom. We're not giving up, we're giving over. We're saying, God, I trust you more than I trust myself. That brings us to the third key in renewing your mind, learning to trust in God's divine providence. This is where real peace begins, not through certainty about the future, but through confidence that God is already in it. He is present, purposeful, and working in every detail, even the ones we don't yet understand. When I reflected deeply on suffering and the problem of pain, I came face to face with a truth we often avoid. Pain is not always punishment. Sometimes it's permission. Permission for God to shape us, stretch us, and prepare us for something we could never reach in comfort. We often ask for growth, but resist the process. Yet God, in His mercy, gives us what is necessary, not just what is easy. And often it's through brokenness that beauty is born. But trusting in God's providence isn't only for seasons of suffering, it's just as necessary in the ordinary. We tend to look for God in the grand and dramatic, in miracles, breakthroughs, and supernatural signs. But I've found His presence in the mundane too, in the quiet of early mornings, in the laughter of children, in the decisions we make when no one else sees. Trust is not just for crisis. It's for the daily, the routine, the unnoticed. It's learning to recognize that the same God who holds the stars also holds your schedule, your interruptions, your disappointments. Patience is perhaps one of the most overlooked expressions of trust. We live in a world that idolizes urgency, but heaven sees waiting differently. Waiting is not a waste. It's a workshop. It's where our faith is refined. It's in the stillness that we discover if we truly believe God is who He says He is. Patience is not passive. It's defiant faith. It says, "Even when I don't see the result, I will not move without you, God." It declares that God's timing is not just acceptable, it's perfect. Over time, I've come to imagine trust like a tree planted deep in the soil of God's faithfulness. The storms will come, they always do, but that tree stands firm, not because it resists the wind, but because its roots run deep. That is what trust offers us. Not a life free of storms, but a life that cannot be uprooted by them. When your soul is anchored in God's providence, your peace no longer depends on circumstances. So how do we grow in trust in a world that praises independence? We practice. Trust is not a spiritual emotion. It's a spiritual discipline. Every time you choose to pray instead of panic, to wait instead of rush, to rest instead of worry, you strengthen your foundation. Trust doesn't require perfection. It simply requires your return. And every time you return, you are met by a faithful God who never left. God's providence is not a lofty theory, it's a lived reality. It's the door that opens you didn't expect. It's the setback that protected you from something unseen. It's the closed opportunity that redirected your path for something better. It's often hidden in the inconvenient, the delayed, the unnoticed. But when you walk closely with Him, you start to see how even the detours had direction. When you live this way, something shifts deep within. The obsession with control begins to lose its grip. Fear loosens, anxiety fades. You stop trying to script your own story and begin to trust the author of it. Trusting God doesn't mean things always go smoothly. It means that no matter how rough the road gets, you're not walking it alone. There's a freedom that rises when you stop demanding answers and start depending on presence. You begin to accept that silence doesn't mean absence, and delays don't mean denial. You begin to walk with open hands, no longer needing to manipulate outcomes. You stop chasing control and start following peace. But that doesn't mean life will be painless. Trust doesn't remove hardship, it reframes it. It changes the question from, "Why is this happening to me?" to, "What is God forming in me through this?" And that change in perspective, however subtle, can shift your entire journey. It moves you from being a victim of circumstances to a vessel in God's hands. So now you're left with a choice: to keep carrying the weight yourself or to hand it over. To cling to your limited understanding or to lean into divine wisdom. That choice won't always feel easy, but it will always be worth it. And the more you trust, the more you'll begin to notice something sacred. God has been there all along. In the storm, in the stillness, in the silence, in the waiting. This is the invitation of divine providence, not to understand everything, but to trust the one who does. Not to walk without fear, but to walk forward in faith, knowing that every step is guided by a hand that never lets go. This truth is not easy to accept, but it is essential if we truly desire freedom. Carrying bitterness might feel justified, maybe even protective, but in reality, it only binds us more deeply to the very pain we long to escape. Bitterness is deceptive. It whispers that holding on will somehow bring justice, that staying angry keeps us safe. But the truth is, it traps us. It robs us of joy, distorts our perspective, and poisons the well of our spirit. Forgiveness, on the other hand, is not weakness. It is strength. It is the soul's quiet rebellion against darkness. And that brings us to the fourth key in the journey of renewing your mind. Always forgive and release bitterness. What you're about to discover is that forgiveness isn't just a spiritual suggestion. It's a powerful invitation into peace, healing, and freedom. Let's explore what it truly means to let go and make space for grace. This is more than a moral concept or spiritual cliché. It is a daily, deliberate act of courage. Forgiveness doesn't pretend that the offense didn't hurt. It doesn't erase the wound. Instead, it shifts the power. It says, yes, I was hurt. Yes, it mattered. But I will not let this hurt dictate the rest of my life. That one decision, no matter how difficult, opens a door within us that bitterness will always keep closed. A door toward healing, toward restoration, toward a future not built on pain, but on grace. It's easy to misunderstand forgiveness. Many think it means minimizing the damage or acting like nothing happened. But that's not what forgiveness is. Forgiveness doesn't excuse behavior. It reclaims your freedom. It doesn't condone injustice. It sets the heart free from its control. You can forgive someone and still hold boundaries. You can forgive and still seek justice. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace over poison. It's about taking back your future from the hands of your past. The soul is not designed to carry the weight of unresolved anger. When we hold on to resentment, we become prisoners to memories that were never meant to define us. Our minds grow restless. Our hearts grow cold. And slowly, without realizing it, the bitterness we thought was protecting us begins to corrode us from within. Forgiveness is the key that unlocks the chains. It is like clearing debris from a river. Suddenly, the living water of God's presence flows freely again. Peace returns. Joy becomes possible. The cluttered space of the heart is made holy once more. And let's be honest, some wounds cut deep. Some betrayals feel almost unforgivable. Maybe the person never apologized. Maybe they never acknowledged the pain they caused. And maybe they never will. But that's the beauty of forgiveness. It doesn't depend on them. It's not a transaction. It's a transformation. You forgive not because they deserve it, but because God desires your heart to be free. You forgive because healing matters more than holding on, because your future deserves more than your past can offer. There is something profoundly sacred about forgiving someone who never says sorry. It's a holy defiance. It's choosing to live whole even when others refuse to change. That kind of forgiveness breaks the cycle. It refuses to let hurt be inherited. It gives your children a better legacy. It gives your soul the room to breathe again. It invites the Holy Spirit to take residence in the very place bitterness once occupied. And when you forgive, it doesn't mean the pain didn't happen. It means the pain no longer has authority over you. You're not pretending it didn't leave a scar. You're simply choosing not to pick the scab again. That is maturity. That is strength. That is what Christ meant when he spoke of loving your enemies, of blessing those who curse you, of turning the other cheek. Not to be passive, but to be powerful in the Spirit, to overcome evil with good. Forgiveness also reshapes how we see others. When you begin to let go of bitterness, you start to see people not as enemies, but as broken beings, just like you. You start to understand that hurt people often hurt people. You begin to extend compassion not because they earned it, but because you remember how much you've been forgiven. This doesn't mean you allow abuse. It doesn't mean you stay in toxic situations. It simply means you refuse to become what hurt you. And the deeper you walk with God, the more you'll find that forgiveness is less about a moment and more about a posture. Some wounds require repeated release. Some memories will try to creep back in, but each time they do, you have the opportunity to choose again, to choose peace, to choose healing, to choose God's voice over the voice of pain. So I ask you now, what are you still holding on to that God is asking you to release? What names, what memories, what silent anger still lingers in the corners of your heart? Maybe today isn't about getting even. Maybe it's about getting free. Maybe it's about no longer dragging yesterday into your tomorrow. Bitterness will keep you stuck, but forgiveness will move you forward, not because justice was finally served, but because mercy had its way. That's what grace does. It gives you what you don't deserve, and it empowers you to give others the same. Forgiveness doesn't mean the pain never mattered. It means your healing matters more. So today, let your heart be light. Let your spirit be whole. Forgiveness is not a denial of what was. It's a declaration of what can still be. You are not bound to the wound. You are called to freedom. And that freedom begins the moment you say, I release this. I will no longer carry what God never meant for me to hold. Let peace be your portion. Let grace be your path. And let forgiveness be your gateway to the life God always meant for you to live. As we journey deeper into spiritual renewal, we begin to realize that strength in God's kingdom looks nothing like the world's version of power. It isn't loud or demanding. It is steady, quiet, deeply rooted in trust. The closer we walk with God, the more we understand that true greatness comes from humility, not pride, and that lasting strength is revealed through gentleness, not aggression. That leads us to the fifth key in renewing your mind, cultivating humility and meekness. This is where the soul finds rest, not in proving its worth to the world, but in walking humbly with the one who already gave it worth. Humility, as I've come to understand through both experience and reflection, isn't about self-loathing or shrinking back. It's about seeing yourself clearly, acknowledging your strengths without arrogance, your weaknesses without shame, and your life as part of a story much bigger than yourself. Real humility begins the moment you accept that you are not the center of the universe. It is the quiet recognition that every breath, every gift, every step comes from a greater source. Once you embrace that truth, you stop striving to be seen because you know you are already known by God. In God's eyes, humility is not a lack of strength. It's the beginning of wisdom. It teaches you to listen before you speak, to learn before you assume, and to treat others with honor rather than judgment. A humble heart doesn't resist correction, it welcomes it. It doesn't see people as competition, but as companions in a shared journey. Humility frees you from the need to be superior and the fear of being inferior. It roots your identity not in performance, but in the steady assurance that you belong to God. What I've discovered is that pride often masks insecurity. Those who cling to control are usually terrified of being exposed, but the humble have nothing to prove and nothing to hide. They live in the confidence that they are fully known and fully loved. That confidence leads to authenticity, not performance. Humility allows space for growth because it acknowledges, I don't have all the answers. And that awareness is not weakness, it's the foundation for transformation. Closely tied to humility is a quality the world often misunderstands: meekness. For a long time, I wrestled with what it meant to be meek. We're taught to associate it with passivity, fragility, or being overlooked. But meekness isn't weakness, it's strength under control. A meek person is not powerless, they are composed. Meekness is the steady spirit in the middle of chaos, the calm response when provoked, the grace to hold back when pride wants to lash out. Meekness is choosing peace when anger would feel justified. It is confronting wrongdoing with clarity, not cruelty. It is speaking truth with love and holding your ground without hostility. Meekness doesn't mean you're silent when wronged. It means you don't retaliate just to protect your pride. It takes far more strength to remain calm in the storm than to scream back at the wind. And God honors that kind of inner discipline. When humility and meekness come together, something beautiful happens. You begin to carry a quiet authority. You no longer need the spotlight because you already walk in God's light. You no longer chase validation from people because your soul is anchored in truth. You don't need to win every argument or prove every point because you trust that truth has its own power. Your presence becomes peaceful, not because you avoid conflict, but because you carry wisdom through it. Spiritually, humility and meekness are more than traits. They are environments where God's presence thrives. Pride hardens the heart. Arrogance blocks the flow of grace. But a humble, meek heart becomes fertile ground where God can plant wisdom, growth, and peace. Scripture doesn't say the proud inherit the earth. It says the meek do. Not because they overpower, but because they are trusted to steward what others seek to control. I've noticed that my own growth didn't come in moments of praise, but in moments of silence. when I was willing to listen, reflect, and be reshaped. Humility opened that door and invited change. It quieted my ego. And in a noisy world where everyone is trying to be heard, humility becomes a rare and powerful gift, not just for the one who walks in it, but for everyone they encounter. Humility also reshapes how you see others. You stop evaluating people by what they own or what they've achieved. You begin to see them through God's eyes, flawed, yes, but made in His image. That shift changes your relationships. You become more patient, more gracious, more willing to walk with others instead of stepping over them. You don't have to prove yourself anymore. You're free to serve, to uplift, to be present without needing attention. Meekness, likewise, is what sustains you when life gets hard. It helps you face disappointment without turning bitter. It helps you respond to injustice without becoming hardened. Meekness gives you the power to say no when your boundaries are threatened, and the strength to say yes when love requires sacrifice. It keeps your heart soft, your mind clear, and your spirit open to God's voice. So how do you grow in humility and meekness in a world that celebrates pride and mocks gentleness? You begin by turning your gaze upward. You stop chasing the applause of people who cannot see your soul. You stop building your identity on accomplishments and start building it on grace. You practice listening. You seek feedback. You serve quietly. You celebrate others without envy. You learn to lose arguments that don't matter and to win battles that require no victory. True greatness in God's kingdom doesn't look like the world's version of success. It looks like Jesus, kneeling to serve, forgiving in silence, walking in love. Humility and meekness are not accessories to faith. They are the essence of it. They are the fruit of a life that is surrendered, steady, and deeply rooted in divine truth. And in the end, this posture of the heart brings something the world can never give: peace without performance, strength without striving, and a life not built on applause, but on presence. The steady presence of God who walks with the humble and gives rest to the meek. That is the quiet power you're invited into, and that is the fifth key to a renewed mind. As God continues to renew our minds and reshape our hearts, something powerful begins to happen. We stop seeing people as obstacles or threats and start seeing them as souls, deeply loved by the same God who loves us. The more we grow in faith, the more we are called to live it out, not just in private devotion, but in how we treat those around us. Love becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a decision, a way of life, a reflection of the heart of God. And that brings us to the sixth key in this journey of transformation: loving others with compassion and empathy. This is where faith becomes action and where the presence of Christ in us begins to truly touch the world around us. Love, when rightly understood, is not a fleeting emotion or a poetic sentiment. It's a daily decision, a tangible action, a commitment to serve and uplift another, even when it's inconvenient, uncomfortable, or undeserved. Through years of observation and reflection, I realized that real love moves beyond words and feelings. It steps into the ordinary moments of life and chooses kindness when judgment is easier, patience when frustration rises, and sacrifice when comfort tempts us to withdraw. If we're honest, it's far easier to talk about love than to practice it. But unless love shows up in action, it remains incomplete. Loving others, at its core, is not optional for those who claim to know God. It is not a suggestion. It is a reflection of our relationship with the one who is love himself. When I wrote and spoke about the nature of divine love, it became clear to me that how we treat others is the clearest mirror of how deeply we understand and receive God's love. We cannot claim to walk with God and live with indifference to those around us. To see another human being through the lens of grace is to recognize the image of God within them, regardless of how broken, distant, or difficult they may appear. This kind of love is not born from sentiment but from surrender. It demands that we lay down the instinct to put ourselves first. It requires a shift from self-centeredness to other awareness. True love pulls us out of isolation and into connection. It reminds us that every person carries a silent struggle, a quiet need, a wound we may not see, Compassion opens our eyes to those needs and moves our hands and hearts to respond. When we love with compassion, we extend more than kindness. We extend hope. We tell others, not with words but with presence, that they are not invisible, not forgotten, not beyond the reach of care. There's something sacred about choosing to serve someone when you gain nothing in return. That's where the purity of love is most visible. And it is in those moments that our faith becomes real, not just in theory but in practice. When love costs you something, your time, your comfort, your pride, that is where it begins to resemble the love of Christ. He didn't wait until we were worthy. He didn't love from a distance. He stepped into our pain, carried our burdens, and met us at our lowest. When we love others in even the smallest echo of that way, we participate in something eternal. But love also requires courage. It takes strength to open your heart when it's been hurt before. It takes resilience to keep showing up when appreciation is absent. And yet, this is what love does. It doesn't always wait to feel right. It chooses to do what is right. It forgives even when the apology never comes. It listens even when the world is loud. It gives even when nothing is guaranteed in return. This is not weakness. This is love at its most powerful. Love that reflects the heart of God in a broken and hungry world. As we begin to live this way, love becomes more than a virtue. It becomes a mission. Every conversation becomes an opportunity to offer grace. Every encounter becomes a moment to restore dignity. Every act of compassion, no matter how small, becomes a seed of transformation. We do not always see the immediate impact of our love, but that should not stop us from offering it. Often it is the unnoticed gestures, the quiet encouragement, the patient silence, the undeserved kindness that leave the deepest imprint on a soul. In the end, to love others well is to live out the very purpose we were created for. We were not made to live in isolation, comparison, or division. We were made to carry each other. And when we do, we discover that our own burdens feel lighter. Love, paradoxically, replenishes the one who gives it. When you pour out compassion, you find your own heart expanded. When you lift another, you rise with them. This is the mystery of love. It multiplies when shared and strengthens when tested. So I urge you to look again at the people in your life, not just the ones who are easy to love, but also the ones who challenge you, stretch you, and frustrate you. Ask yourself, what would it mean to love them not from your own strength, but from the overflow of God's love for you? What would it look like to become a vessel of healing instead of hurt, of restoration? This is the calling of those who walk in faith, not to retreat from the world, but to love it into wholeness, one heart at a time. As your heart grows in love and empathy, something else begins to shift, your perspective. You start to realize that life is not just about what's ahead or what's been left behind, but about what's happening right now. So many of us miss the beauty of the present because we're caught in the noise of regret or the pressure of the future. But God is not limited to yesterday or tomorrow. He is with us here, in this very moment. That brings us to the seventh key in renewing your mind, living in the present with gratitude. This is where peace takes root, not in perfect circumstances, but in a heart that recognizes God's goodness in the now. There is a quiet truth I've come to know deeply over the years. The present moment is not just a slice of time, it is sacred space. It is the only place where life is actually happening. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but the present is where the soul meets reality, and more importantly, where the soul meets God. I've observed how often we drift away from this truth. We replay regrets from yesterday, or worry about what tomorrow might bring, all while the present patiently waits to be noticed. And yet it is here, in this moment, that the voice of God speaks clearest. Not in what was or what might be, but in what is. Living with gratitude is how we enter fully into that moment. It is not a response to perfect conditions. It is not the overflow of a comfortable life. Gratitude, I've found, is a discipline of attention. It is the deliberate act of recognizing goodness, even when life is messy or incomplete. It is the choice to see the fingerprints of grace in the small, the overlooked, the ordinary. When we give thanks for what we already have, we are no longer blind to what is right in front of us. We begin to see again, with clarity, the gentle mercies that have always surrounded us. Many believe gratitude begins with grand gestures or mountaintop experiences. But I have learned that the truest gratitude begins much smaller. It starts with the warmth of sunlight on your skin, the sound of a loved one's voice, the breath in your lungs that arrived without request. These moments are not trivial, they are holy. They remind us that life is not built from extraordinary events, but from the accumulation of quiet gifts. And when we train our eyes to see them, we step into a deeper level of awareness, a spiritual attentiveness that invites joy even into the ordinary. This mindset of thankfulness is not passive, it's spiritual warfare against the culture of dissatisfaction. Every day we are surrounded by messages telling us we need more, deserve more, or are somehow lacking. Gratitude dismantles that illusion. It says, "What I have is enough for today." It quiets the anxious mind, it silences the voice of comparison, and it opens a space for peace to take root, not because circumstances change, but because our perception does. This is why I believe gratitude is not merely an emotion. It is a spiritual practice, one that brings us closer to the heart of God. There is a kind of freedom that only comes when we stop striving for what's next and begin to fully embrace what is. That doesn't mean we abandon hope or ambition. It means we no longer delay joy. We don't wait until everything is resolved, until every prayer is answered, until life looks how we want it to look. We choose to rejoice now, because even in the waiting, even in the confusion, God is present. His presence isn't on hold until things get better. He is with us in this breath, in this heartbeat, in this very moment. Gratitude also opens us up to the people around us. It softens the way we speak, it changes the way we respond. A grateful heart has no room for entitlement or resentment. It becomes generous because it sees abundance, even when the world sees scarcity. When you live this way, your presence becomes a blessing. Your words carry weight. Your life becomes a reflection of divine contentment, and others begin to feel peace just by being near you. What's more, living gratefully reorients your relationship with God. Instead of approaching Him only with requests, you begin to approach Him with reverence. Your prayers become less about what you lack and more about who He is. Gratitude transforms your conversation with the Creator. It shifts it from complaint to communion, from restlessness to trust. You stop chasing answers and start treasuring His nearness. And that nearness, I've discovered, is enough. As you begin to embrace gratitude, you may not see external changes right away, but within, something profound begins to shift. Worry loses its edge, fear loses its volume, the heart begins to rest. And that rest is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of peace. It is the awareness that you are being carried even when you do not feel it. It is the confidence that the one who sustains the stars is sustaining you right now. So I invite you to pause, not just mentally, but spiritually. Look around. What have you been overlooking? What daily mercies have gone unnoticed because you've been waiting for something bigger? The gift you seek may already be in your hands, disguised as something ordinary. Gratitude uncovers it. Gratitude multiplies it. Gratitude transforms it into joy. This is the life we are called to live, not one driven by endless striving, but one anchored in sacred appreciation. The present moment, when seen through the lens of gratitude, becomes a doorway into God's goodness. And the more we walk through it, the more we realize we were never lacking. We only needed to see what was always there. The eighth key in renewing your mind: letting go of envy and cultivating contentment. When you stop looking sideways and start looking upward, you'll begin to see that what God has given you is not only enough, it's exactly what you need for the life you've been called to live. There is a silent thief that robs countless souls of joy. It doesn't come in the night or knock at the door. It moves quietly, almost unnoticed, and yet its impact is profound. I'm speaking of envy, the subtle yet corrosive desire to have what belongs to someone else. Over time, I've come to see envy not just as a moral failing, but as a spiritual wound. It doesn't only affect your thoughts, it alters the posture of your heart. It causes you to fixate on what you lack instead of honoring what you have. And the more you entertain it, the more blind you become to your own blessings. What makes envy so dangerous is that it disguises itself as motivation. It whispers that you're just ambitious, that you're striving for more. But underneath that surface lies a deep dissatisfaction that no achievement can heal. Envy is not about wanting something good. It's about resenting that someone else has it. It is born from comparison, nurtured by insecurity, and sustained by spiritual forgetfulness. When you envy, you forget who you are, whose you are, and what has already been given to you by grace. I've noticed that comparison rarely leads us to gratitude. Instead, it fosters a false narrative that someone else's success is somehow a threat to our own. We begin to measure our worth by the progress of others. We see their blessings as reminders of our perceived lack, and soon we are no longer running our own race. We are chasing someone else's shadow. This is not the path of peace. It is a treadmill of unrest, and the faster you run, the emptier you feel. To break free from this cycle, we must turn inward, not to withdraw, but to realign. True contentment begins not with getting more, but with recognizing the eternal value of what you already possess. It is the quiet conviction that what God has given is not just enough. It is precisely what your soul needs for this moment. Contentment is not complacency. It doesn't mean you stop growing or dreaming. It simply means you stop chasing in order to prove your worth. You stop believing the lie that your joy is hidden in something just out of reach. Instead, you begin to see that joy is found in presence, in gratitude, in trust. What I've come to understand is that contentment is a form of spiritual maturity. It's the result of learning to anchor your identity not in possessions or praise, but in purpose. You no longer need to be the most admired, the most successful, or the most gifted. You only need to be faithful to what God has entrusted to you. That shift, though invisible to the world, produces visible peace. You sleep better, you listen more, you celebrate others without feeling smaller. That is the fruit of a soul that is satisfied in God. To cultivate this satisfaction, we must first confront the scarcity mindset that envy feeds on. Scarcity tells you that there is not enough love, opportunity, recognition for everyone. But the truth is, God is not limited. His provision is not distributed by competition. What He gives to one does not diminish what is meant for another. When you truly believe this, you stop living with clenched fists. You open your hands to receive, and just as importantly, to release. You become less focused on what others are building and more devoted to building what's been placed in front of you. Living with contentment is not the same as settling. It is choosing to live in alignment with eternal values. It is the ability to say, I will be joyful today, not because everything is perfect, but because I trust the one who holds my tomorrow. Contentment frees you from the pressure to perform. It anchors you in the truth that your worth is not measured by accumulation, but by divine design. And that changes how you engage with life, from striving to stewarding, from competing to contributing. In this way, contentment becomes not just a personal virtue, but a spiritual witness. People will notice. They will feel your calm. They will sense your confidence. And many will wonder how you carry peace when life is unpredictable. That's when your life becomes a testimony, not because you have everything, but because you've learned to find meaning in what matters most. And that kind of peace cannot be manufactured. It is the result of trust, gratitude, and an unwavering belief that God has not overlooked you. So today, consider this invitation. Release the weight of comparison. Stop measuring your life against someone else's highlight reel. Begin to notice the small, sacred gifts that surround you. Speak blessings over others without bitterness, and choose to believe that what you have is already part of a divine plan. Contentment is not the end of desire. It is the beginning of deeper fulfillment. And when you walk in it, your soul finds rest, not because everything changed, but because you finally did. And as all these truths begin to take root, when your mind is renewed, your heart aligned, and your life centered on God, you are no longer just being transformed for your own sake. Something greater begins to unfold. Your life becomes a vessel through which others can encounter hope, truth, and love. You are no longer merely a recipient of grace, you become a reflection of it. That brings us to the ninth and final key in renewing your mind, becoming light and salt. This is where your faith meets your purpose. When you live with authenticity, kindness, and integrity, you don't just change yourself, you change the atmosphere around you. You carry the presence of God wherever you go. There is a calling placed upon every life that chooses to walk with God, a calling not just to believe, but to become. I came to understand this not only as a truth taught in Scripture, but as a challenge lived out daily, to be light and salt in a world that often prefers darkness and distraction. This is no passive identity. It's a divine assignment that shapes how we show up in every space we enter. It's not about perfection or performance, but about presence. When I reflect on what it means to truly live as light and salt, I see a life grounded in spiritual authenticity and overflowing with grace. To be light is first and foremost to live in truth, but that truth is not harsh or self-righteous. It is vulnerable, courageous, and real. Light doesn't mean pretending to be flawless. It means having the courage to live honestly. It's easy to curate an image of strength, to wear a mask of confidence, to act like you have it all together. But the light God calls us to share is not artificial. It's the kind that shines through cracks, the kind that reveals hope in the midst of struggle. To live in the light means to reject the pressure to perform and instead embrace the freedom of being transformed. You don't hide your weaknesses, you surrender them. You don't fake your faith, you cultivate it through obedience, even when it's messy. Living as light also means being visible in a way that reflects something greater than yourself. You become a beacon, not of self-promotion, but of divine reflection. The way you speak, the way you forgive, the way you treat those who cannot repay you, it all tells a story. You become a living testimony that the light of God has touched your life and continues to guide it. And here's the beauty. You don't have to force it. When you walk closely with God, light naturally flows from you. It reveals, it warms, it heals. And for someone else, your light might be the very glimpse of hope they've been praying to find. But light alone is not the full picture. We are also called to be salt. And salt, as I've come to appreciate, is not just a symbol of flavor. It's a symbol of preservation, of influence, of intentional impact. In a world where many live numbed by routine and dulled by despair, salt awakens something. To be salt is to bring life, texture, and depth to your surroundings. It means that your presence brings restoration, not disruption. Empathy, not indifference. Through small acts of kindness, genuine interest in others, and faithful integrity, you create an atmosphere where people feel seen, valued, and safe. Salt also preserves what is good. In a culture that often discards what is sacred, salt stands for something solid. It holds the line of moral clarity without becoming condemning. It lives out righteousness with humility, not superiority. When you live as salt, you don't just blend in, you elevate. Your values quietly challenge others to reconsider their own, not because you preach at them, but because your life itself becomes a sermon. And over time, that influence shapes families, friendships, workplaces, even communities. When light and salt come together in a single life, the effect is powerful. Light shows the way, salt makes the journey worthwhile. Together, they form a witness that is both transformative and irresistible. But this witness is not built in moments of grandeur. It's formed in everyday decisions. When you choose honesty over convenience, when you choose compassion over judgment. These are the moments that make your life a lamp and your presence a preservative in a world starving for both. I believe that one of the greatest deceptions of our time is the belief that our impact must be loud to be meaningful. That's simply not true. Some of the most powerful light shines in quiet rooms. Some of the most enduring salt is sprinkled silently with no applause. You don't have to be a public figure or have a platform to change the atmosphere around you. You only have to be faithful in your corner of the world. And if enough of us live this way, the ripple effect becomes undeniable. What gives this calling its strength is that it originates not from within us, but from the one who formed us. It is God who lights the lamp. It is His truth that gives us clarity. It is His Spirit that enables us to bring flavor to our interactions. Without Him, we shine artificially. We season without substance. But with Him, our lives become living altars, places where others encounter the goodness and presence of God in real, tangible ways. This is the life that transforms the world, not by force, but by faithfulness, not by dominance, but by devotion. And the beauty of it is that anyone can begin. You don't need a title. You don't need a perfect past. You need only a willing heart and the courage to live differently, to live with integrity when no one's watching, to speak truth in love, to serve without expecting reward. These are the unseen disciplines that turn ordinary lives into extraordinary testament. So I ask you, what kind of presence do you carry into the spaces you enter? Do people feel the warmth of truth and the depth of grace when you walk into the room? Does your life offer hope, direction, or healing to someone who may be silently struggling? These are not questions of shame, but of purpose. Because the truth is, the world is not looking for more noise. It's looking for light. It's hungry for salt. And you, with all your flaws and imperfections, have been invited to be that for someone else. The invitation is not just to believe, but to become, to step into your God-given identity as light in a world that often hides in shadows, and salt in a culture that has lost its taste for what is true and good. This is your mission. This is your purpose. And it begins not with a grand gesture, but with a quiet yes, a daily decision to live in such a way that heaven touches earth through you. There is a sacred rhythm that sustains the soul, one that I have come to rely on more deeply with time. It is the union of prayer and the Word, a powerful intersection where the human heart meets the divine will. This meeting place is not reserved for the religious elite or the spiritually advanced. It is open to anyone willing to step into honest relationship with the God who speaks, listens, and transforms. At its core, prayer is not performance. It is not a ritual to impress or a script to memorize. Prayer is a genuine encounter, a soul stripped of pretense, standing in the light of truth, seeking guidance, comfort, and connection. When I pray, I am not reciting facts to a distant deity. I am opening my inner world to a Father who already knows it all, and yet still longs to hear it from me. It's in this space that masks fall away. You don't need the right vocabulary, only a willing heart. And something extraordinary happens when you begin to pray from that posture. Your burdens are not only voiced, they begin to shift. Not always outwardly, but inward. Your mind, once flooded with anxiety, starts to settle. Your wounds, once hidden and denied, begin to heal under the gentle hand of divine compassion. But prayer alone, though powerful, is most transformative when paired with Scripture. The Word of God is not a book of ancient advice or moral slogans. It is living. It breathes life into the dry places of the soul. It is sharper than any human opinion, stronger than any temporary truth. What I've learned is that the Bible doesn't just give you knowledge, it gives you vision. It trains you to see from God's perspective, not your own. And when your thinking begins to align with eternal truth, your life starts to reflect eternal purpose. There are times when your heart will be too heavy to find the words. That's when the Word speaks for you. When confusion clouds your judgment, Scripture becomes a compass. When fear grips your future, it becomes a promise. You are not left to navigate life with your own strength or logic. The Word renews the mind by confronting lies with truth and fear with faith. It teaches you how to respond to hardship, how to persevere in suffering, and how to walk in humility when success comes. When you begin to pair your prayers with Scripture, you enter a deeper kind of communion. You are no longer just talking to God, you are learning His language. You begin to understand His heart. Your prayers become more rooted, your thoughts more focused, and your emotions more anchored. You are no longer reacting to life, you are walking through it with clarity. This fusion of dialogue and truth builds not only knowledge, but trust, and from that trust grows strength. Hardship no longer shakes you the same way it once did. Not because the pain disappears, but because your footing is firm. You have built your foundation not on opinion or emotion, but on revelation. Prayer pours out the soul, the Word fills it again, and this cycle sustains you through every season, joy and sorrow, success and loss, certainty and mystery. That is what it means to be spiritually grounded. And let us not miss this. The goal is not just stability, it is intimacy. A relationship with God that is alive, vibrant, and personal. So many treat God as a distant concept or theological category, but I discovered He is neither. He is near. He desires nearness. And when you begin to meet Him in both prayer and Scripture, the relationship deepens. It matures. You move from ritual to revelation, from habit to hunger. You stop seeking only what He can give and start longing for who He is. This intimacy transforms how you live. You become more attentive, more compassionate, more discerning. You learn to hear the whisper of His Spirit even in ordinary moments. You begin to carry peace in rooms filled with chaos, because your spirit is no longer tied to circumstance. It is tied to a greater presence. You stop living by reaction and start moving by wisdom. You're no longer driven by fear, because you've heard the voice that says, "Do not be afraid, I am with you." That nearness also births conviction. When you read the Word and truly engage in prayer, you can't stay unchanged. God will gently confront what's misaligned, not to condemn you, but to free you. He'll reveal pride not to shame you, but to make room for humility. He'll uncover idols not to embarrass you, but to reclaim His rightful place in your life. And the more you yield, the more whole you become. Transformation never happens apart from truth, and truth, when received in prayerful surrender, always brings light. This sacred rhythm is not meant to be reserved for emergencies or special occasions. It is daily bread, a sustaining presence. And the beauty is, the more you taste it, the more you want it. The more you pray, the more aware you become of your need for prayer. The more you read the Word, the more your soul craves its wisdom. What once felt like a task becomes a treasure. What once seemed like duty becomes delight. That is the mark of a life being shaped by the Spirit. So if you feel distant, weary, or unsure where to begin, start with one honest prayer. Open the Bible and read not to check a box, but to hear the voice that shaped the stars and still speaks to you. Bring your questions, bring your silence, bring your pain, and let the presence of God meet you right where you are. This is not about perfection, it's about pursuit. The more you show up, the more He will reveal Himself. And in that process, you will not only be strengthened, you will be changed. You will begin to live from a place of spiritual clarity. Your steps will carry divine weight. Your words will hold healing. Your faith will become a source of courage, not just for you, but for those around you. Because when prayer and the Word become the center of your life, you don't just survive, you begin to shine. And in that light, others will see not just your strength, but the presence of the One who walks with you. Change, as I have come to understand, is not reserved for a future version of ourselves. It is not something we wait for or stumble into by accident. True transformation begins when we decide, intentionally and consistently, to live differently. And every principle we've explored is not just a concept to admire, but an invitation to participate. These aren't abstract ideals, they are stepping stones to a life filled with meaning, anchored in truth, and shaped by divine presence. The choice to walk in this new way is not simply about knowledge, it's about action. It's about saying yes to renewal, not just in thought, but in lifestyle. Each truth we've uncovered, whether about humility, forgiveness, gratitude, trust, or love, holds the power to reshape us from the inside out. But only if we choose to respond. Spiritual growth is not passive. It requires movement. Reflection alone cannot bear fruit unless it's followed by obedience. You may feel inspired, even stirred, but the real change will only begin when these truths move from your mind into your decisions, your habits, your relationships. And that is where the beauty of faith becomes undeniable. Not in what you say you believe, but in how you live out what you believe. But I don't write these things as someone who has arrived, but as someone who has walked the road and discovered just how much God can do with a willing heart. I've seen how surrender, even in its smallest form, can open the floodgates of peace. I've seen how one choice to forgive, one act of humility, one moment of prayer can redirect the entire trajectory of a person's life. The life of faith is not about grand gestures. It is about daily alignment, and every day brings new opportunities to choose God over fear, truth over comfort, love over selfishness. Perhaps you've read or heard these truths before. Perhaps you felt their weight but didn't know how to begin. Let this be your moment, not to overanalyze or delay, but to begin. The journey of faith is not a race to perfection. It's a long walk of trust, made one step at a time. You don't need to have it all figured out. You simply need to take the next right step. And that step may look like waking up tomorrow with a new intention. It may look like opening your Bible with fresh eyes. It may look like reaching out to someone in grace, praying when you'd rather worry, or simply choosing stillness over distraction. This is how renewal unfolds, not all at once, but piece by piece, day by day. And the more you walk in this truth, the more your inner world begins to reflect something steady, unshakable, and alive. You begin to live with clarity. You make decisions not out of fear, but out of purpose. Your emotions no longer dictate your peace. Your identity becomes rooted not in what others say or in how life fluctuates, but in what God has declared over you. And that foundation, once laid, becomes the bedrock on which everything else can grow. A renewed mind leads to a renewed life, and a renewed life becomes a light to others. The change that begins with you does not end with you. It reaches into your home, your workplace, your community. It becomes a living testimony that faith is not just a belief system, it's a transformation story. People begin to notice, not because you preach, but because you live with integrity. Not because you're louder, but because you're more peaceful. Not because you've become someone else, but because you've finally become who you were always meant to be. And that's what I believe God longs to do in each of us. Not to change our personalities, but to awaken our true selves. To strip away fear, shame, and insecurity, and reveal the image of Himself that He placed within us from the beginning. When you live according to His design, when you embody the principles of His kingdom, you begin to radiate something that no circumstance can dim. You become a vessel of peace in a chaotic world, a carrier of truth in an age of confusion, a builder of bridges where others build walls. But let me be clear, this life of renewal will not always be easy. It will stretch you. It will expose old wounds and challenge old patterns. It will require courage to keep going when nothing seems to change. Yet every struggle along the way is part of the refining. God doesn't waste the tension. He uses it to strengthen your faith, sharpen your vision, and deepen your dependence on Him. And in the end, you will not be left empty. You will be filled with the kind of peace the world cannot offer and the kind of purpose that doesn't fade. So I urge you now to take this seriously. Don't let these truths pass through your mind only to vanish with the noise of the day. Write them down, meditate on them, practice them, speak them over your life. Let them guide how you respond to adversity, how you treat others, how you steward what's been entrusted to you. Let them influence how you think, how you pray, how you live. This is the work of renewal, not once, but daily, not for show, but for growth. And as you begin this journey, remember this: you are not alone. God walks with you in every step. He strengthens you when you feel weak. He restores you when you stumble. He celebrates every step forward, no matter how small. The same Spirit who raised Christ from the dead is at work in you, renewing, reshaping, and reawakening your soul to live a life marked by faith, not fear, by peace, not panic, by purpose, not passivity. Let this be your declaration today. I will no longer live on autopilot. I will no longer be driven by the past or distracted by what I cannot control. I will walk in truth. I will live with intention. I will be transformed by the renewing of my mind and step into the life God created me to live, not someday, today, not when everything is perfect, but here and now. You've been given the tools. You've been shown the path. Now the invitation is simple but sacred. Live it. Let the renewal you seek begin from within, and watch how God uses your obedience to shape not just your life, but the world around you. Before we close, I want to invite you into something deeper. We've walked through powerful truths meant to be lived, not just learned. But no transformation is complete without surrender, and no journey is sustainable without divine strength. If your heart is stirred and your spirit is ready, then come with me now into prayer. Let these words not just be spoken, but felt. Let them rise from a place of longing for clarity, for courage, for real change. This is your moment to meet God, not in theory, but in presence. Let us pray together with open hearts and a spirit ready to receive. Father, I come to you now not as someone with all the answers, but as someone who recognizes how much I need you. You see the corners of my heart I've tried to manage alone, the fear I hide, the control I cling to, the pride I excuse, and still you welcome me. I don't want to keep living out of habit or emotion. I want to be guided by your truth, changed from the inside out. So here I am, asking you to begin something new in me. Teach me to renew my mind, not just once, but daily. Where I've allowed lies to grow, plant truth. Where shame has taken root, speak freedom. Where my thoughts have been shaped by fear or culture, align them again with your word. I no longer want to be defined by this world's standards. I want to be transformed by your spirit and grounded in your promises. Lord, help me to love you above all else. I confess that I've often given my heart to things that don't last. Success, approval, comfort, but none of them can take your place. Today I choose to place you at the center of my desires. Teach me to love you with all my heart, soul, and strength. Let that love shape how I think, how I live, and how I love others. Help me to trust in your divine providence. I admit, I've tried to control outcomes, force timing, and carry burdens that aren't mine to hold. But you've shown me that peace doesn't come from knowing the plan. It comes from knowing you. So I lay down the pressure to figure it all out. I trust that you are already working in ways I cannot see, and that your timing is perfect, even when I don't understand it. Father, help me walk in forgiveness. I no longer want to carry the weight of bitterness or replay the pain of the past. Set me free from the need to hold grudges or justify resentment. Give me the strength to forgive, not just in word, but in truth. Fill the empty places with your peace and teach me to love with grace, even when it's difficult. Clothe me in humility and gentleness. In a world that glorifies pride and power, let me walk in quiet strength. I don't want to seek recognition or prove my worth. I want to reflect your heart. Help me listen before I speak, serve without needing credit, and respond with calm even when I'm tested. Let my confidence come from who I am in you. Help me love people with real compassion. Teach me to see them through your eyes, not as problems or comparisons, but as your creation. Let my actions be a reflection of your love, consistent, kind, and generous. May my presence bring peace, not pressure, healing, not harm. Anchor me in the present. I've spent too many days worrying about tomorrow or regretting yesterday. But you are here, now. This moment is holy because you are in it. Teach me to be still. Teach me to notice. Let gratitude fill my heart, not just for big blessings, but for every breath, every sunrise, every quiet reminder that you are near. Free me from envy, Lord. I don't want to miss the blessings in my own life because I'm too focused on someone else's. Teach me to celebrate what you've given me, knowing that it's enough for the journey you've called me to. Let contentment rise in me until I no longer measure myself by what I don't have, but by who I am becoming through you. Make me light and salt in this world. Let my life be honest, humble, and full of grace. Give me the courage to live with integrity and compassion, even when it's costly. Let my presence bring hope to hard places, and let the way I live quietly speak of the one I follow, not for my glory, but for yours. And finally, deepen my faith through prayer and your word. Let these be more than routines. Let them be my lifeline. Help me to hear you clearly, speak to you sincerely, and grow in wisdom through your truth. Let my connection with you become my greatest strength, my deepest joy, and the source of every renewal I seek. Thank you for never leaving me, even when I've wandered. Thank you for offering mercy instead of shame and calling me forward into a life of purpose. I step into that life now, not with fear, but with faith. Shape me, guide me, and let my life become a living response to your love. I am yours. Amen. As we come to the end of this message, I want to speak directly to your heart. You are not weak. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are strong, stronger than you know. You are here right now because something inside of you refuses to settle for a life disconnected from truth. You are here because the Spirit of God is awakening something deeper within you. And I want you to hear this clearly. The path of faith you're walking is not a detour. It is the direction. Every step forward, even the smallest one, matters. And even if you feel like you're walking through uncertainty or struggle, don't lose heart, because you are still moving forward. You are still in the story. And this story is not finished. There will be moments when you feel tired, when doubt whispers in your mind, when fear tries to make you turn back. But you were not made to quit. You were created to endure. You were formed in the image of a God who does not fail. And if you keep pressing in, if you keep showing up even when it's hard, you will see the fruit of your faith. You may not see the harvest today, but the seeds you are planting through prayer, through humility, through obedience, are being watered by heaven. One day, you'll look back and realize you were never alone in the journey. God was with you the entire time, strengthening your steps and guiding your heart. So I encourage you now, hold on to the truth that has been spoken over you. Let it shape how you think, how you speak, and how you live. You are not who the world says you are. You are not the sum of your past or the weight of your mistakes. You are chosen. You are loved. You are being renewed every day. Even when you don't feel it, keep pressing on in faith. Keep walking with integrity. Keep believing that what God started in you, He will finish. Because those who trust in the Lord will not be put to shame. Those who wait on Him will rise again. And those who stay faithful through the fire will come out refined and victorious. Now is the time to live boldly, not recklessly but courageously. Live a life that reflects the grace you've received. Speak truth with compassion, stand firm without pride, love others without fear, and never forget this is not a solo journey. You are part of something greater. A body, a movement, a kingdom that cannot be shaken. Your faith is not just personal, it's powerful. It's a light in the darkness and a testimony of hope. Let it shine, let it grow, let it be the legacy you leave behind. And if this message has spoken to you today, if it has stirred something in your soul or reminded you of who you really are, I invite you to take action. This isn't the end, it's just the beginning. Press the like button right now to let us know this content has encouraged your spirit. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the truth-filled messages that will continue to guide your journey. And don't forget to drop a comment below with the number 777. That number reminds us of spiritual completion, of divine alignment, of the God who perfects everything in His time. By typing it, you're not just participating, you're connecting. You're joining a community of people who, just like you, are hungry for more than surface faith. People who are learning to live with purpose, on purpose, by faith. This community exists for you. A place to ask questions, share testimonies, seek encouragement, and grow deeper in your understanding of how faith intersects with everyday life. Here, you will not be judged for your questions or your wounds. You will be welcomed. You will be seen. You will be challenged to go deeper, not for the sake of religion, but for the sake of relationship. Together, we will explore what it means to live a life grounded in Scripture, led by the Spirit and empowered by grace. You were never meant to do this alone, and now you don't have to. We're building something eternal, one heart at a time, and we want your heart to be part of it. So join the journey, let your faith take root, let your story be transformed, and let your voice be heard among a generation that is rising not with noise, but with conviction, not with performance, but with power. You are part of that rise. You are part of that move. And if you stay committed, you will see breakthrough, healing, clarity, and divine fulfillment that goes far beyond what you ever imagined. So today, as you walk away from this message, walk with purpose. Hold your head high, not in arrogance, but in assurance. You are not walking in circles. You are walking in purpose. God is not finished with you. He is just getting started. Let every prayer you've prayed, every tear you've cried, every step you've taken be proof that you are made for more. You are being shaped for victory, prepared for impact, and positioned to shine. And nothing, not fear, not failure, not delay, can stop what God has already put into motion in your life. Stay faithful, stay focused, stay grounded in the truth, and never forget, you are stronger than you think. You are walking in divine alignment, and you will finish this race, not in defeat, but in triumph. Keep going. Your best is not behind you, it's ahead. And we will walk it together, one step, one truth, one act of faith at a time. Welcome to a life of purpose. Welcome to a life renewed. Welcome home.